Hello everyone, so today we will create a small Earth in Blender 2.80. So this is the newest version of Blender, it's a beta. So we will just create this Earth with three spheres. So the first sphere will be our ground, the second sphere will be our clouds, and the third sphere will be the atmosphere that you see, the bluish aura that you see around the Earth. So it's very easy to do. We will need 5 textures to do it. So here we have the albedo, which will be the basic color. We will have the bomb mapping, which will be for the mountains and the rivers and the shores. We will have our cloud texture, which will be the second sphere that we talked about. We will have our city light, which will be what you saw here. It will be the light that came from the shadow side of Earth. And finally, we will have our mask, which is to reflect the light in the oceans and the continent too. So it's a very easy tutorial to do, because we don't need to do some kind of sculpting or modeling. It's really just about nodes, so I think that it's a very good introduction for Blender 2.80, so that you can get used to it. So of course, as you expect, we will use a UV sphere, because this is the closest we can have. This is the closest we can have for a planet. So we will just subdivide this. Sphere. So we just go here in the modifier tab. We apply a subdivision surface, and we will need 4 times here. Okay, so just click 4, and we also need to smooth it. So you can go in object here and shader smooth to smooth the shader. Okay, so here we have our basic Earth. Now we need to add our cloud, so we can add a new one, and I'm gonna scale it a little bit, because the clouds need to be, of course, on top of our ground, otherwise we won't see it. So let's apply a new subdivision surface, put it like this. Let's apply a smoothing option, and you can see that it is scaled now. If we press Z and we go in the wireframe mode, we can see that they are not touching each other. So I'm gonna just name it before. So we have our cloud here. So if you press Earth, you can see that they are not touching each other, because if they touch each other, you won't be able to see it, and there will be some rendering problem. So we have those 2 spheres, and finally we will add our atmosphere. I'll add again a subdivider, 4, apply, and I'm gonna apply the smooth, and this time I'm gonna scale it to 1.05, and should not forget to name it. So if I go back to the wireframe mode, I have my Earth here, I have my clouds, and I have my blue atmosphere. So you can see that they are not overlapping each other. Now the new problem here is that if I go back in solid mode and I press 0 for my camera, I'm just gonna lock my camera to my view before. So if I press 0, you can see that it's quite small, right? Or small Earth looks small, and I want it to look pretty big, and I don't want to change my cam settings to like zoom to zoom, because it won't have the same effect really. Okay, so what I can do to solve this small problem is that I can remove my camera a little bit. I can select my Earth, my cloud, and my atmosphere, and scale it until it reaches about a scale of 20. Okay, so now the look will be much better, and it will look much more like what you saw in my video. Okay, so like it will be here, my African continent will be here, and Asia will be here with the light. So I'm gonna keep my camera here. I'm gonna start to work with my lighting now. Okay, because of course it's in space, so of course what we need, a sample light is not enough because we're in space, right? We're in space, so I'm just gonna go here in cycles, select here, and I'm gonna click on use nodes, and I don't know why it put it automatically at 100. I think it's way too much. So let's try to see how our shadows will look in rendered. So to go in the rendering mode in the viewport, just press Z and 8, or just click here. So we don't see anything. It's because we must press here. It must be the sun, and of course this one is too much. We just need 10. Okay. So now what we have to do right now is, I just want to see my option, because I think we can just kind of put a preview mode. Because I just want to use a preview mode, but I don't know where it is exactly in Blender 2.8, because as you can see everything has changed, but it's okay. So what I'm gonna do here is that I'm gonna rotate my light so that the shadow will be will basically cover half of my planet. Here we can see that this is not the kind of shadow you could have on Earth, because our sun is like it's like horizontal, and we have like a plane. It's like our sun is aligned to our planet, so this kind of thing should not be possible. The shadows should be vertical. So just click on camera here, go back to your viewport, and we will start to tweak it. So press R for rotation and Z. Oops, this is the camera. Press here for the source of light, press R and Z, and switches like this. So here we have our basic angle, and now you can press R and Y maybe, and it's already good, and maybe more, because I want it to be very straight. Okay, so this looks more like our art will look like, right? It's like this. So right now we have our shadow. This is the kind of shadow we want. Now it's time to apply our texture. We have 5 textures to apply, so we will start. But before that, oops, I'm sorry. I still cannot. So I'm gonna go in my node editor, so just press Shift and F3, and we have this. But before we start to work with our textures, I would like just to change the background because we are in a space environment. So we are supposed to see a pitch black background, and we will add the stars later. We will add a kind of Milky Way background, but now, for now, we can use this. We can use this kind of background. We can use this kind of background for our rendering. We can go back to solid mode. Here I think that my GPU is like freaking out because I'm doing so many stuff at the same time. Okay, anyway, so we have this. Now it's time to add our textures. So let's go back to object and select this. And before we do it, actually, we can hide the cloud and we can hide the atmosphere because we don't need them. We will just work on our Earth now. Press new here, and let's call this material ground material. It will be our continent and our oceans. So of course, since we want to apply a texture, if we want to apply a texture, we should use diffuse shader. This is the basic one we use for normal textures. And now we will add our map, so we will use an image texture. And if you remember, we have Altos 5 textures, so we will start by albedo. Plug it here. Earth albedo. If you press oops, sorry. Okay, so albedo. So we have our art, but before we do it this way, we must make the projection as a sphere, and it's okay if it does that, because we will add a texture coordinate and it will solve the problem. So just plug the generated node to the vector here and it solves our problem. So here we have our basic art, but we need some kind of reflection or specularity. So what we can add a glossy shader, and we want to mix the glossy shader with the diffuse, so we can use another shader which will mix both. So we can use the mix shader. You plug it here. By the way, you can press Shift A if you want to use the nodes, or you can press Add here if you want to do it manually here. And before I do this, I would like my art to look more toward Africa, this way. So what I did, I just press R and Z. So now it looks like the picture I showed you. So we will plug it here. Now it has too much light, so we will try to add a mask which will only make the light reflects in the ocean. So we will add an image texture here. Open Earth and our ocean mask. So what it will do is that it will block the light from the continents and just reflect the light from the oceans, as you can see here. We'll connect it to the mix shader here, and of course we will plug it here, and we will use it as a sphere because it's on a sphere. It's a UV sphere, of course, so we will choose UV sphere, and we will use a non-color data because we just want the information of where the sun will reflect. We don't want the color. Okay, you can see that here it did the opposite. It's because, as you can see, we want the oceans to reflect the light and the continents to absorb the light. So if you want the opposite, we can just use invert. You can use the invert function here. Oops. So now it's solved, but but there is too much light in the oceans. So we can use a Fresnel node to solve this problem, and I'm just gonna tell you a little bit what is a Fresnel node. So the Fresnel or dielectric Fresnel node computes how much light is reflected off a layer, where the rest will be refracted through the layer. The resulting weight can be used for layering shaders with the mix shader node. It is dependent on the angle between the surface normal and the viewing direction. So basically what we want is that we just want the light to be reflected on the edge of the planet and just a little bit around, but not inside like this, okay? Because it doesn't make any sense. I think I maybe forgot to smooth my stuff because there is still lines here. There is always those kind of problems. Maybe I should have maybe I should increase the quality. Yes, it seems better now. I'm gonna put it to 4, and this will be when we start to render. Okay, so let's add our Fresnel node. So just go here in search, write Fresnel, and of course we want to mix our diffuse map with our glossy map, with our reflection. So you have to make a new shader, a new mix shader here. I'm gonna put it here, and I'm gonna put the diffuse here, and I'm gonna put my Fresnel here like this. So now you can see that the light will only be reflected on the oceans and not on the continents. Okay, so it is almost done for the ground area. So we will just add a bump mapping node so that we can see the mountains and the shores and all the things that are in 3 dimension, okay, to make it look. So all my files are there. I'm gonna put the bump here, and of course it will be spherical again, and it will be a non-color data. I'm gonna plug my generated to the vector here, and I'm gonna use a bump node, of course, because I have to tell Blender that this texture is a bump mapping. And I will plug my texture to the height here. It's not normal, it's height. And I will plug my bump to the normal here. So now you can see that now it looks like it is in 3D. So it's a little bit like strange, because now we just have like 32 samples, but when we add the clouds and when we add the atmospheres, it will look much more better. If you want to reduce the bump mapping, you can reduce the strength here. by, let's say, 0.8. Okay, so it will look better with the clouds. So our first layer is done. This was our globe, this was our ground. Now we have to work with our clouds. So I'm gonna go back here to cloud. I'm gonna activate it because now we cannot see it, and now we see it. I'm gonna click on new, and I'm gonna call it ground material. I'm gonna do the same thing, and here, since it's a cloud texture, I'm gonna need two textures. I'm gonna need two shaders actually. So I'm gonna start by a mix shader to mix my two textures, and I'm gonna add a transparent shader because those are clouds, so we must be able to see between the clouds and a little bit inside the clouds as well. So it will be my second shader. So you can see that there is a small transparent layer here, and I'm gonna add my diffuse shader, which I always use for all the textures. It's white, it's normal, and now I'm gonna use my clouds. I'm gonna plug it here, and it will be projected again, so it will be sphere projection. I press open, and clouds here. You can see that it's good, but it's a little bit too much. It's because we must add our texture coordinate. You can see that it is a little bit better. What you can do here, because it's basically too much ugly, I just want a little bit of clouds. I don't want this stuff here. I can rotate it, so I'm gonna press on my cloud here and press R and press Z to rotate it, because I just want a little bit of clouds. I don't want the big chunk you saw here. So this is perfect, I think. So it looks good now, but we could add some bump mapping to make the clouds look 3D as well. So we can use the node we used previously. So just go back to vector and add bump, and it will be our texture. It will be our generated texture here. So we're gonna apply it to our texture coordinate, and we will apply it to our diffuse node. So we can also add the intensity. So let's say 4, and now you can see that it's a little bit. It looks a little bit more like it is volumetric. Okay. So if we press the camera here and we wait the rendering. So now we will add, I think I'm gonna rotate it a little bit because this is still too much for me. Press R and Z. Because clouds are beautiful, but I don't like too much cloud neither, so I'm gonna also change the light a little bit. Okay, I could also change the strength of the light because I don't think there is enough light. So this is perfect. Cloud, I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna add, okay, you see here I forgot to do something very important because I forgot to change the scale actually. So you see here, because when I increased the scale, I forgot to apply it. So this is why it maybe looks weird here. So what I can do is that I can press Ctrl A to apply the scale. It will maybe be better. Clouds, and seems that the lock may lock it. Now it's good. I'm gonna put it like this so that we see the dark side of our planet. So now what is remaining to do is the atmosphere that we have. So I'm gonna go to atmosphere here, I'm gonna activate it, and I'm gonna add a new. So I'm gonna add what we call a volume scatter, because our atmosphere is a volume and not a surface. It's like a globe field. It's a globe field. It's basically like some kind of fog or some kind of atmosphere. So it will be a volume and not a surface. It is very important. So this is our basic atmosphere. Can turn it into blue already. And now I can add something called the color ramp. The color ramp node. Sometimes it's better to search on Google for the website. Color ramp Blender. So the color ramp node is used for mapping values to color with the use of gradients. Okay, so we need some gradients from the far side of the planet to the close side. Okay, so I'm gonna add this color ramp. Add the color ramp, and I'm gonna add it to my density. I'm gonna add it to my density, and I'm gonna add a converter, a math node, so that I can multiply the effect to be able to tweak it. So here, call it multiply, and you can see that it's pretty good for the moment, but it's a little bit too much. The fog is too much intense, so we will have to scale it down by playing with our multiply function. So I'm gonna press 1 here, and I'm gonna decrease a little bit. So now we will press, I'll try 1.01, why not? And you can see that it did a pretty good job already. Okay. My only problem is that the atmosphere here looks too much thin. So this is not because of my. I'm gonna actually add, because I did not finish, I'm gonna add my color gradient, my texture gradient, I think, or yes, my gradient texture. and I'm gonna apply a quadratic progression, and I'm gonna add all this to geometry, and it will be my position here. So the atmosphere here, you can see it's too much thick, so that means that here, if I go here in my dimension, it's too much big. It should be much more closer. So here I have like 19.9. Here I have 20.1, and here I have 20.9. So I'm gonna try with 20.3 everywhere, because the line should not be that thick. Okay. I'm gonna try 20.5. It's maybe okay. So yeah, because we just need a small layer here. We don't need that big stuff we see here. Okay. So this is basically our Earth. We use 32 samples because this is just a demonstration. And now we will try to play with the light of the cities, so that we can see this part and we cannot see this part. So the light are supposed to only appear when the Earth is in the shadow, right? So we're not supposed to see light in Africa or in Europe or even in the Middle East. We're only supposed to see the light in India and in Eastern Asia. So I'm just gonna name my material before we continue. And to apply my light, I will have to go on the ground here. And it always make that kind of problem. You know, this is a bug in Blender, because when I change of material, it changed the orientation of my planet somehow. So this is a bug because we're using the beta. So I'm gonna wait for the update right now, but we'll start to play with it. Okay. So we'll start to play with it. I'm gonna try to bring it back where it was. So I'm gonna try to bring it back here, hoping that it will not create some problems later when it will be rendered. So it was here. I'm gonna go back here to check if something bad changed. Okay, I think it's pretty good. So now what we have to basically do is that we have to apply a mask that will only display the light when we are in the shadows. So we can use a node called normal. We can use a node called normal to do such thing. So I'm gonna use a new shader, a new mix shader. I'm gonna plug it here, and I'm gonna use a new node for emission, because we are because this is for the light, so we need a lot of emission. I'm gonna put it in red right now, and I'm gonna show you why in a few minutes. Okay, because I need to see where my normal map will be, like where my light will be and where it will not be. So this red will like help me to see where my light will be. You will understand it when you see it. So this is my normal node. I'm gonna plug it here. And I'm gonna add a new texture coordinate, because to work on the surface. And Of course it will be normal here, not generated, because I want to play with the normal. So what is very complicated here is that I must tweak this in order to change the red on my globe. So it's like a 2D, it's like a 2D panel for a globe, so it will be kind of hard to tweak it, and you can see that when I change here it tweaks. So I really need the red just on the dark side here. So sometimes I can do it in one shot, but other times it's quite hard to do. Okay, and I guess I can go here to, it's always hard to do. Because there is basically no way that I can rotate it. Okay. I'm gonna try like okay, I'm gonna try like this. We will try like this, and if it doesn't work, of course we will have to tweak it. So I'm gonna suppose that it is good that way. So now I'm gonna add my city, my city light texture, image texture. Open, desktop, earth, and night light. Of course, I'll have to add the sphere here. Plug it here. You don't see that much because of course I must apply it to my first texture coordinate here. You see it a little bit, but it will probably not be the expected result because it never works. It seems to work a little bit. Okay. So if we press our camera, does it look good? So it looks exactly as what we want, right? So we have the bright side which doesn't have any light, and we have the dark side, the shadow side, which has our light. And of course here we can see that it's quite good, but it's not enough strong. The light is not enough strong. So what we can do is that we can add a matte. We can add a matte converter, a matte function to increase to increase to the scale we want. So here, if I press here and I add it, multiply, and I add it to 10. Now you can see that it is much more brighter. Okay, we could probably do like better with some kind of like lens flare for the light, but we don't have time. I just really like wanted to show you how to do a basic earth for your CGI scenes. So if we press here, we go back to atmosphere, we can see that it did it perfectly. So now, of course, if you want to like render it, this is up to you. You can use Eve or you can use Cycles. I used for my image here. For my image here, I used Cycles with 400 samples. It took me a lot. It took me like 20 minutes because my PC is very low and my GPU is not that strong. But you can use Cycles and you can use 400. So this is what I did. Thank you very much, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel.